So, my dear participants, I'm very happy to be here. This is my second presentation at the Language Learning Center. Today, I'm going to talk about active learning, in particular, benefits and issues of collaborative learning. By the way, just to let you know, I have a hard time pronouncing the word collaborative, so please be very patient with me. It's just something that I have from the childhood, so not that I know English from the childhood, but still. I'm Anya Shkirova, teaching assistant of Russian at the Department of Foreign Languages and Literatures. Por favor.
It's not working.
It worked like 2 seconds ago, I promise.
Is it on?
Let me see. Did we accidentally turn it off or something? No? Okay, it worked one time.
It's okay. I can do it with computer because I'm pretty good about switching out the slides because I always do it without the clicker at my classroom and I run a lot. So
Okay.
right, Tim. Okay. So before we get started, I would like to introduce the objectives for today, and they are: we will identify the benefits and issues of collaborative learning, and what is very important is that I will basically tell you about the benefits and the issues we will try to talk with you through together, because it's a collaborative learning, right? Then we will compare the variations of pair and team learning, and then we will employ some of the variations of pair and team learning into practice. I can tell you ahead of time, probably we're not going to employ some of the variations of pair and team learning into practice because it's just simply not enough of us to do that. But I will definitely explain step by step how to do that. Okay. So, before we get started, what is active learning? What do you think is active learning? Without reading the display, what do you think is, how do you see active learning?
Where the students are participating and they're not just passive
Participating, right?
observers.
Mm-hmm. Leslie?
Yeah, just not sitting and listening to someone lecture, but working collaboratively.
Okay, Tim?
Cognitive processes inside the cerebral cortex and making those connections, such as when learning a language, instead of studying vocab, word by word, you study it as a sentence. Or if you're doing an action, one of the ways you can do it is like, "Я живу в Albuquerque." I live in Albuquerque, and you start asking yourself this question. Or when you're doing action, like I'm walking, you start utilizing that language.
Yeah, like total
as you're
physical
doing it.
response. Right. All of the questions are wonderful answers. All the answers are wonderful. And it's great that you mentioned the word action. Because active learning actually requires a lot of action from our students. So to come back to definition, so action learning is associated with attention to relevant information. So that word attention is the core in here. Also organizing it into coherent mental representation and integrating representations with other knowledge. So basically is to transfer the information from the short-term memory to the long-term memory. Okay, so what is the value of active learning? You already said very important ideas. But let me tell you a little bit more about it. So active learning involves the learner and the active processing of incoming information, right? So how many of you heard someone saying, "Oh, I understand everything you said in the lecture, everything you said, every word, but then I'm trying to do it myself. I can't." Right, so there's a really big difference between listening and learning, right? Between speaking and learning, right? Because, for instance, I can memorize a chunk of information, but will it actually mean that I learned it, right? And learning language also is a huge field where the practices of memorization are very popular. And professors think, oh, okay, you memorize this chunk and you're fine, you know the language. No, it's not learning the language. Okay, so second is that, again, having repeated after professor or having student understand the lecture doesn't mean that he's able to use that. So this is why it's very important to do something in the middle between short-term memory and long-term memory in order for students to transfer this information and basically store it. So active learning helps eliminate the illusion of understanding. Active learning is associated with actions. So basically, unless students do something with the information, then they know, then they will know it. But if they don't do anything with this information, the information basically just passes by, which is very upsetting. And the third, active learning opens up the opportunity for motivation. Okay, imagine yourself. You're sitting in the lecture, taking notes. I mean, I do know students who do prefer this option, but for the majority of students, is it interesting to take notes and then just go home? And then read it and then, you know, just, okay, good. And then put these notes, you know, on a dust shell and just, okay. Yeah, I took that class, I remember. Yeah, I did. Do you remember anything from that? No. So it's a biggest issue in our education that we're trying to, you know, put the information in the head and then, okay, it's there. And then students don't recall it. They cannot recite it because they didn't do anything with it. So it is very important for motivation to make the information interesting and actually useful. Ta-da! This is what we're doing now. Okay, so I love this chart because it shows us the practices of passive learning and active learning, right? So 10% what we read, it's only 10% that we remember that, right? 20% of what we hear, 30% of what we see, 50% of what we see and hear, right? 70% of what they say and write, and 90% of what we do. So basically, all learning should incorporate active learning strategies. And I don't understand why we are still so passive about it. Language Learning Center. So, why active learning in groups? Why? Why not just instructor and students? Why do you think it works? Anyone.
Well, everyone has strengths and weaknesses. Everyone has ability. Some abilities are stronger than others in certain students.
Mm-hmm.
One of the ways of learning is no man stands alone. We all learn from each other. We all stand on the shoulders of giants. Albert Einstein, I think. So when you do a collaborative group learning, if you have certain people that are, if you throw all strong people together, that's all you're going to be focusing on. It's sort of like doing a sports activity. Or I'm only going to worry about my all-stars. And that, because these guys, I don't have to work, it doesn't require so much, and yeah, let these guys, others fall aside. Now, if I take these all-stars and I split them up and help utilize those people with the stronger abilities to help these others, it's a collaborative effort. Now, when I start doing that collaborative effort, I'll get a better result of these people going up there. There was a study done decades ago in psychology of, like, it dealt with mathematics. If you have someone that's struggling in a certain area, have him start tutoring someone below later on, and that way it reinforces the learning that he may have dropped.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about it too today. It's a great strategy. It's called peer tutoring. It turned out, and Tim, you're exactly right. It turns out that students prefer to learn in groups. First of all, because of the lower level of anxiety towards subject or even practicing the materials, because we are here, talking about learning, active learning, saying, oh, they just have to apply it into the practice or they just have to do a project, but then, if students will be just with me, student and me, then this collaboration will be definitely less effective than students with each other, even in the strategy of active learning. So it definitely turns out that interactions with peers are more productive than one interaction between students and teachers. Okay, so why does it work? Effective for a wide range of goals and content, right? Basically any subject we just taught, any content that we have to teach will be more beneficial in collaborative atmosphere. Effective for students of different levels and personalities. And why it is effective? Because basically you're mixing up the students, right? And every time it's different. This is what I do in my Russian club. Okay, you do this, you work together today, now you work separately. I always give them the opportunity to have an experience with someone else. Also, better cognitive outcomes, as I already told you, it's much better to apply information into practice than just hear it and yeah, I understand it, but it doesn't mean anything that you understand it. Mutual support and stimulation. For me, it is definitely a huge part in my classroom because I try to pair students even if they are very different level. I still pair them up because one can stimulate each other, and somehow, I don't know, my students are just so great and they are always support each other in this case, and it's this community is amazing and they really help each other, so collaboration is essential in my part. Reduces, this is the hardest word, you have to help me with that. Absenteeism. The absenteeism, it's a new word, but it's a beautiful word, which we definitely have to reduce in our classrooms because it happens pretty often, especially in the morning classes when students didn't have enough coffee. Higher level of students questioning. It is true because, and not only questioning the professor or teacher or instructor, it's the questioning within a group. So basically, it will work for all levels of students who have different characteristics on learning. So students do ask questions. They ask questions each other, so which is even more important in this case. Okay, and opportunity for elaboration. Practice makes perfect. And the last one, students are more likely to work in small groups than large ones. And we all know that because it reduces the level of anxiety. It's also more, how do you say, private. It's also more...
Forces them to, they can't rely on others.
Exactly. and there, when we have a lot of students in one group, it's, okay, who does what? So it's better to have small groups, but again, still, I think it's very important to... Actually, we're going to talk about it right now. So, variations in collaborative learning. There are 4 variations. First variation is learning in pairs. Second is team learning. Third one is online groups. And the last one is learning communities. And we're going to go through all of them. The first one is learning in pairs. Peer tutoring. So peer tutoring is an exceptional method of teaching and learning. Why it is important? Because do you know? Did you see the last classes? I always tell students, okay, teach your partner right now, right? We use a lot of techniques in my classroom, and I always say, okay, teach him now. So whenever we teach it, we learn it ourselves, the best. So, for instance, what I'm doing right now, do you think I'm what? Doing the lecture? No, I'm learning about active learning. This is the best way to learn about active learning, is basically to teach it. this is how I taught the subject of Russian as a second language, because when I entered the field, I didn't know anything about it. So I learned about second language acquisition only because I am teaching the subject. Learning cell or student diet, right? Diet.
Sure.
It's a primitive strategy that we use a lot, but basically what is very important in this case is students asking and answering questions that they have about the read material, or I don't know, about anything basically what is happening in the class. And then the last one is Thinkpairshare. I'm sure you're familiar with this strategy. Basically, Thinkpairshare is something that recaptures students' attention and stimulates further thinking about the issue or topic that is covered in a class. So, Thinkpairshare. We're going to do it right now. Think about the value and possible issues of learning in pairs. You have 10 seconds. All of you.
So do you want us to get in?
No, think.
No,
First
right now
think.
we're
First think. You know, students sometimes
Contemplating,
write it
seeing-
down.
Seeing the problems that can occur.
No, don't talk. Just think. Please. Por favor. Пожалуйста. Like that. Like Socrates. Mhm. And you know, some students usually they take notes, but it should be a quiet time. 10 seconds is done. Okay. Now, I want you to pair with your colleagues, probably, and discuss what you think. Давайте, давайте.
We're going to pair the three of us.
Yes.
Okay, and you two are way more experienced at this.
Well, not necessarily.
Maybe.
So value.
Everybody has different experiences, so everybody can share their different experiences with what they've learned and what they're comfortable with.
What's the subject material? Because that can be very difficult. Now, if we're dealing with language, it's not as bad. But if you deal with different subject materials, it can get very argumentative, and it decreases the learning process when you start throwing that into a group.
You can also have different power dynamics where, like, if you've got, say, a guy that, you know, wants to talk all the time, like a big football player type that's, you know, oh, I've got all the right answers, and, you know, little meek.
Like Trump. I'm sorry, it was like perfectly set up for that.
And, you know, little meek people aren't going to want to contribute anything, so.
And you get shy people like me that's very quiet in class.
Okay, you have 10 more seconds, and then we're gonna go to another stage.
You could probably tell I'm not very quiet.
And cheers. So now I want all of us to discuss what are we thinking about it. What do we think about the value and possible issues of learning in pairs? What do you think is the value of learning in pairs?
Strengths, people learn differently from hearing, reading, and writing. One person can help the other in that weakness.
Yeah.
Our problems is if you get too many people in the triad or trojka.
But it's pair. Now it's two people.
It's two pairs. Some people just are meek and quiet. They won't work whatsoever.
Very
They just
good.
want to sit back and not there. And then you can have someone that's more boisterous like me that can be way too dominating.
Teacher is very important in this case, right? Leslie, what do you think?
I mean, I think that was kind of all of our group ideas, right?
I'm sorry.
Okay, no, that's
sorry for being the
perfect. And this is
spokesman.
called collaboration, right? Because
Where's my shot
you
collar?
learn you identify the main points, and then you just one person can talk about it. But yes, I agree that the possible issues definitely could be the dominance of one student over another. But as I told you, in this case, the influence of teacher is very important in this case, and dominance too, right? So, kind of, yes, exactly, in this way. Okay, team learning. Team learning is usually identified as team-based learning. Syndicate. I know it's a interesting American word, but it's a British word that is used, and Jigsaw. So team-based learning. Team-based learning is a super popular concept in education. It's basically you break the classroom into teams, and then you give them one assignment that they work during the class, during the week, during the month, or I don't know. Depends how much time you want to dedicate to one assignment. Syndicate is less popular practice. Syndicate means that you split the group. You split the class into 4 to 5 or 6 students, and then you assign different assignments to each group, right? And for instance, on the day of presentation, everyone presents, right? And so basically what it means, everyone learns something new from other groups. And the last one, my favorite is actually Jigsaw. And how many of you know what the Jigsaw is? No?
Mm-mm.
Oh, that's the best strategy in the world. Okay, so the Jigsaw. Again, we're not going to do that with you, but I want you to be familiar with this strategy, and I'm going to explain you what to do. So, for instance, let's imagine it's not 3 of us, but 9, right? That would be so nice. It would be 9 of us. But yeah, let's imagine it's 9 of us. So it should be preferably even participants in each group, right? So it should be 3 or 4 or 5, but in each group. Then the teacher has to prepare 4 or 3 chunks of information. So basically, it will depend on how many students I have in each group. Since I have 3 students in each group, hello everyone, that means that I will have 3 pieces of information that I want to teach this class, right? Or I split the chunk of information into 3 pieces. Then I am giving the article or piece of information, different one for each participant in the group. So for instance, let's imagine you're one group, right? I give you the piece on Russian Revolution, right? Right. I give you the piece on Stalin. And I give you the piece on patriotic war, right, in Russia. You read the material in one group, right? And you don't do anything. You don't discuss it, but you read it and you are trying to understand it. Then what you should do, you should, in 2 minutes or 1 minute, you have to meet with your expert group. What does it mean? Since we have another 2 groups, right? They do the same thing. So basically what I want to do, I want here a group of 3 people who do Russian Revolution. Here I'm going to have a group of 3 who do Stalin. Oh. And here I have a group who does patriotic war, the Great Patriotic War, right? So, since you already read your material, right, you can discuss it in your expert groups. Usually, each piece of information has questions at the end that will help you to understand the material better or that you have to answer. So you discuss it with your expert group, you think about how you're going to present it, and just trying to remember this. Then students from the expert group, they go to the original groups. And each student is teaching about his piece of information. So this strategy is found to be very effective because basically every student is an expert. Come back to your original groups and teach others about your article. It's a great, great strategy that I always...
I have heard of that strategy.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't realize that's what it was called.
Yeah, Jigsaw. It's a great strategy to... and maybe the first time students... for instance, you could use the material that students had to read for the classroom, right? And I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard that a lot of students simply don't read what is assigned for them. And so if they know that they're gonna have Jigsaw, they will feel a huge sense of responsibility on their shoulders. Because each student has to participate, no matter what. You have to be an expert because you're gonna teach the group. That's why I always recommend to have only 3 or 4 students maximum, so the expert student also don't feel a lot of pressure on his shoulder, because it's hard to teach 5 or 6 students. It's better to have small group of people. It's a great, great, great strategy. Okay, so Thinkpairshare. Think about the value, possible issue of learning in teams. All of you, давайте. It's very active.
Yeah,
I
okay.
thought we were supposed to be thinking. We talk-
Yes, think.
Just think.
Yeah.
Just, okay.
Okay,
Okay.
please pair and no, just pair.
Backgrounds. Understanding another person's background can help, or knowing someone's background can help you learn to communicate, as you two definitely probably have that experience of like understanding another person's background, or understanding bigger scope is the target audience, of like how can I best convey this message. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So it's one of those things that can become an issue, so you have to think about that background. I see this as see one, do one, teach one in the medical profession. Like when going through surgery or dropping people down under anesthesia. You can read all the stuff, but then you end up practicing, increase in the technology.
Okay, you have 1 minute left, so make sure that everyone speaks.
Sorry.
This is how you cut
Okay.
the dominant.
So,
I know, I
yeah,
need
different people
shot.
have different skills and different areas where they like to do. You know, certain people like to talk, some people like to write, some people like to do drawing or whatever. Anyway, people bring all these different skills into a team, and it's not, you know, you distribute the work, and people who are good at certain things can, you know, be leaders for that.
My issue with learning in teams is that I always got paired with the bums that didn't want to do anything.
That's me.
Oh, so I think that's the issue is,
That's the downside.
that's always the
There's
downside
always
of-
somebody who's just not gonna pull their weight.
Yeah, and everybody else has to wind up compensating for them, so that's my issue.
That's
Okay,
That's a big-
let's share. What are your thoughts about benefits and possible issues of learning in teams? Leslie, how about you?
Oh, am I summing up for the whole group this time?
Uh-huh,
Or-
please.
Okay, so, summing up for the whole group is different people have different strengths. Some people
Uh-huh.
want to write, some people want to talk.
So it's the issue, right?
Yeah,
Or-
or no, that
No, no,
also
it's a
could be
good
a
thing.
It's a
strength.
good thing.
It can be
Yeah,
a good thing.
That could be a good thing because,
It could be either way, actually.
I
but-
As long
agree.
as that
Yeah.
there's typically a leader. that leader
yeah, and
identifies
then
those strengths.
another thing is everybody has different backgrounds, which again could be a good thing or a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, you could have clashing backgrounds, but you could also all be bringing something different to the table.
That's true.
And then the other thing that was an issue, definitely an issue, was that there's always somebody that doesn't want to do their part in a group, and that everybody else winds up trying to compensate for the one person that thinks they're special.
And then, do you think that Jigsaw can compensate this?
I think I think doing it in an in-class environment would work to compensate.
Mhm.
And I think the only thing that would worry me about Jigsaw is the 1 to 2 minutes for each person, because I feel like something like, well, I guess I'm just
It
thinking about your
depends.
example,
It
like,
depends.
you know,
Yeah.
I don't know if you can sum up Stalin in 1 to 2
No,
minutes.
no, and it's just I did it for the presentation. I never do that in my classroom.
Boom.
No.
Sociopath.
No, that's
One
hilarious. No,
word.
usually you give like 10, 15 minutes. For
Okay, I was gonna
No.
say, that's, but I think
Yeah,
if you have enough
Stalin,
time.
2 minutes, Leslie. Do it.
Sociopath.
Not at all хорошо.
No.
There you go. That's
Perfect accent.
Sociopath.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and in this case, of course, again, teacher has to be a very attentive person in this case. We have to listen what they're talking about. We have to implicitly control the situation, although it's not that easy sometimes. And we have to encourage demotivated students to keep going, which is a hard task itself. I agree, but it's still manageable.
In
It's
America,
a
yeah.
lot of it's a lot of
In America,
management
it's
in the
hard.
classroom, which you have to
No idea.
establish at the beginning of semester. Okay, so and one of the last collaborative works are online groups. And Leslie, I don't think I will tell you anything new in this case, because these are very primitive. And the first group is called.
You have it switched.
You switched them on
Oh,
your,
you do?
yeah, asynchronous is when you don't all
Oh,
get on
that's true. I'm so sorry. See, another mistake. Anyways, let's switch them in our mind.
Right.
So there are two kinds, right? The online groups that do not meet at the same time, and the other one is online groups that meet at the same time, right? And so for the online groups is discussion boards, email, wikis, and maybe you can tell me other examples.
Wait, which one are we talking about now?
We're talking about synchronous.
Synchronous, when they're meeting at the same
Meeting at the
time.
same time. Do you have any other examples?
Well, I don't know what EdWeb is, but is that like
It's a discussion board.
like a
You could-
video?
you
What?
could-
Well, how about like
Kaltura?
yeah, some actual
Mhm.
video conferencing.
Yeah, definitely. Skype.
Skype,
Right.
Can be
Zoom,
definitely-
any of those, yeah.
What else? The program that you were talking about, Pam.
Oh, you mean Talk Abroad?
Talk Abroad. No.
Well, it is a synchronous experience,
Uh-huh.
but it's only for individual students with their conversation partners. So that's a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other? Do you know that are happening at the same time?
I mean, you can always do group text chats, but those get kind of messy quickly.
They used to have Mocha,
Yeah,
right?
live mocha.
Yeah, that was cool. I liked it when I was learning languages. Yeah. How about online groups that do not meet at the same time? Do you know any examples?
Like
Well, discussion groups.
discussion boards, yeah, it's
Mhm.
all discussion boards.
Or, no, I don't really.
Maybe like blogs, right? Could be definitely, or creating a website.
Right, or when people have their I guess it's like a wiki then,
Mhm.
adding their own stuff to a group or Google Docs or something like
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
Doesn't have to be at the same time, but it could. Google
It
Docs
could.
actually could be both.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's wonderful. So I only have one example, but Leslie knows about this example, and
Oh.
Mhm.
it's one of my best. I know it's there. Yeah, I'm not perfect. So
No.
online groups that meet at the same time, that we just have to write the don't, right? So would we like to watch a video? It's only 3 minutes.
Sure.
This computer is so cool. I need to tell my husband to get me the same one.
Meet Quizlet Live, the easy-to-use classroom game that blends competition and collaboration to engage every student in learning. Quizlet Live groups students into teams that must work together to win. While teams are prompted with the same set of questions, each teammate sees different possible answers, and only one person per team has the match. Students need to communicate to choose the correct answer and move forward in the game. As they play, the teacher's screen acts as an interactive leaderboard, tracking each team's progress and adding fire to the competition. If a team answers incorrectly, they go all the way back to the start, so choosing simply for speed won't work. Instead, the stronger their teamwork, the faster they'll go. And the first team to correctly answer all questions in a row wins. When the game ends, the teacher can lead a class review, or easily start a new round to give students another chance at glory. To play, you'll need an internet connection, one device per student, a teacher-controlled computer, and a way to project. Start by logging into your Quizlet account and choosing a study set. Select Live to generate a game code, then project your screen so your class can see. Have students open the Quizlet app or go to quizlet.live in their browser. After they enter the code, they can add their name to join the game. Everyone in? Your students will be instantly grouped into teams. If possible, ask them to get up to sit with their teammates. When they're settled, start the game and let the fun begin. Quizlet Live. Competition, collaboration, ultimate student engagement. Free for all teachers.
I like how they say free for all teachers, but then you have to buy a teacher's account.
Oh.
Yeah, it's.
That I just thought about how to do
Yeah, I
that.
pay. I
The game
think.
theory of like how to win at that
Um,
game.
Yeah, I pay.
Just-
I pay. I think I pay about $30 a year for this. I mean, it's not bad. I mean, it would be nice to have it for free as a teacher, right? Because,
Yeah.
but I also understand why they're doing it. So, it's a great, great, great strategy. And I don't know, students. See, it seemed to me that students adore Quizlet. They love this competition.
Yeah, we like that competition, but it's like what you said about the one student that isn't really applying. So now I just thought about that and I'm doing game theory. I'm like, how can I achieve the best result? I'm like, I got it now.
So I think we had enough practice of Thinkpairshare, right? But this is how you basically learn what the strategy is just active implementation into practice. And the last one is learning communities, a classroom community. I personally love this ideas, but I can't say that it always works, but it works if a teacher has projects that will be outside of the classroom. So for instance, taking students to the community. Like I used to teach in the bilingual Russian school here in Albuquerque, and that would be a wonderful community-based project to kind of gather my students who are studying Russian with little children who attend school. We did we had I think 2 or 3 events in collaboration with the Department of Foreign Languages, Russian program and Russian School Azbuka together, and students, I don't know, I think students had a lot of fun. Of course there are some issues, you know, between understanding and so on, but still it's a wonderful, wonderful idea of active learning. Because it's a community. Community always works. I think it always works. Yeah. What are your suggestions on how to create classroom community?
Well, I think the thing that we've done here is just the design of the classroom makes a big difference.
Huge.
Yeah, I mean, if you have students sitting together at round tables, or it doesn't even matter if they're round, but you know, whatever, and then also a teacher coming around it, it levels the playing field. Everyone feels more equal. Students form better relationships with one another. They form better relationships with their instructor. So those things are really good to contribute to it.
And I also like to walk barefoot. And students also feel very good, you know, because I take off my shoes and they say, oh, if my teacher is like, you know, so like relaxed and happy, then it means that there's no struggles, you know, and so
That's
it really, like, students see it, they feel it, and the classroom that Language Learning Center provides to us is just one big help
That's
for everything.
actually one of the key things, the energy a teacher can project, and she projects that energy versus a teacher that comes in and they're like, okay, yeah, like that sets that tone for that whole learning environment.
It does important.
Yeah, definitely.
Leslie, do you have any suggestions?
I think my big suggestion is doing, like you said, and doing a service learning type thing where you have something in the community that you're going out and helping with, because I think it really gives the students a nice goal beyond, okay, I'm here to learn this and get my grades so I can get on with doing whatever else, but then it's like, oh, I'm helping other people too.
Yeah, that's
So.
really, I definitely have to think about it more. It's just
Time-
it takes it. Well, yes, the maybe the negative aspect. I don't like to say the
gotta
word
s-
negative, but so maybe one of the issues
complications.
could be that students. My God, sometimes I look at the students and they're like, "Oh, I'm so busy, I can't do that." I'm like, students are so busy nowadays, and they really sometimes cannot spend 2 hours of the day to go somewhere and actually do project. And so we also, as teachers, we also have a lot of pressure, because we're like, okay, so what I'm going to do with students who say, oh, I'm sorry, I cannot do it outside of my classroom time. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have a car to drive. I'm sorry, I don't have money to take Uber. I'm sorry, I just can't go that time. I have a marriage, not marriage, but event to attend. So there are definitely issues about it, but maybe again you can do it in an online.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Actually,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I think also setting expectations at the beginning of the semester, if you communicate clearly at the beginning of the semester, and as part of this class you're going to have to do, X, and just have that expectation up front.
Yep.
That I think
Yep.
helps too.
there. That's that whole purpose. I mean, that's real big on the active learning side, of just like doing something in the culture itself. It doesn't even have to be with a group, but going to a restaurant, and for especially 101, what's occurring here? Oh, evil.
Yeah, and maybe
Evil
that's a good idea. It
yes,
doesn't
and
have to
like
be
even
Russian
doesn't-
community in
it doesn't
particular.
have
If
to
I'm
be
taking
any
my
community.
students, right?
I've studied German before, and one of the things they end up doing is throwing us in a German restaurant and needing to order the food and just do that little talk. Or
I need to build the Russian restaurant here because we don't have it. then I will never end my PhD. All right. So yes, collaborative learning does work, and I highly encourage you to take advantage of it. And the great resources that I just gave you, it's a Derek Bach Center of Teaching and Learning at Harvard University. Just a wonderful resource. And this center also has a great selection of books on teaching and learning, which I encourage you to read. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
And thank you who watched the video. And I hope to see you next time in person.